Welcome to Signal Mystery, the channel, where we uncover the world's greatest mystery stories. The 5 cases I'm about to share with you have something in common. Witnesses existed but couldn't explain what they saw. Evidence was found, but made no sense, and investigators worked for decades and still came up empty. But here's the thing about these particular stories: some of them actually have answers now, and the answers are scarier than the mystery ever was. Stay with me until the end. Case 1, the Somerton Man. In December 1948, a well-dressed man with a fit build and manicured nails was found dead on Somerton Beach in Adelaide, Australia, with no wallet, no identification, and every single label carefully removed from every piece of clothing he was wearing. No one came forward to identify him, and the autopsy found signs of poisoning, but couldn't identify the specific toxin, leaving the cause of death officially unknown. Months later, investigators found a hidden pocket sewn into his trousers, containing a small scrap of paper with 2 words, Tamam Shud, Persian for finished, torn from the final page of a rare poetry collection. The book was eventually traced to a car parked near the beach, and in its back cover, someone had written penciled letters that looked like a cipher, along with a phone number. The woman who answered said she didn't know him, but witnesses said she was visibly shaken during the interview, and she ultimately refused to cooperate further. In 2022, forensic genealogy finally gave him a name after 74 years. Carl Webb, an Australian electrical engineer. But knowing his name didn't answer why he died, who killed him, why every label was removed, or what the coded letters mean. Researchers still suspect Cold War espionage, as the profile fits perfectly. A man with a scrubbed identity, killed by an untraceable poison carrying coded messages. No one has ever confirmed it. Case 2. The Isdal Woman. In November 1970, a hiker found a partially burned woman's body in a remote valley near Bergen, Norway, surrounded by empty sleeping pill bottles and wine bottles, with her belongings set on fire around her. It looked like suicide, but every label had been removed from every piece of clothing she was wearing, which is not something people do before taking their own life. The investigation uncovered something far stranger. In the months before her death, she had traveled extensively across Europe, using at least 8 different aliases with forged identity documents, spoke German and French at near-native level, an accent no one could place, and filled her notebooks with what appeared to be coded writing. She moved between cities in short bursts, always checking in under a different name, never staying long enough to be tracked. In 2017, Norwegian police completed a formal reinvestigation and concluded she was most likely a spy. Norway at the time was a NATO member, sharing a border with the Soviet Union, and Bergen housed a major NATO naval installation, making it a prime target for intelligence operations. Multiple identities, coded notes, evasive travel patterns, and a death staged to look like suicide, all pointed in one direction. But which country she worked for, who ordered her death, and what her real name was have never been confirmed. She is remembered only as the Isdal Woman. Case 3, the Hinterkaifeck Murders. In March 1922, on a remote farmstead in rural Bavaria, called Hinterkaifeck, 6 people were found dead in the barn, including a 2-year-old child, all struck in the head with a blunt implement. But what separates this case from other murders is that it didn't begin the night of the killings. It began months before. 6 months earlier, the farm's housekeeper quit after repeatedly hearing footsteps in the attic, and told people she felt something was deeply wrong with that house. In the days before the murders, the farm owner, Andreas Gruber, told a neighbor about footprints he had found leading from the nearby forest up to the house, with none leading back out, as well as missing house keys and a neighbor's newspaper that had turned up on his property. He told no one in authority and went to the police about none of it. When investigators arrived after the murders, they found that the livestock had been freshly fed, the barn was tidy, and there were signs that someone had cooked in the kitchen recently. The killer had stayed in the house for several days after murdering all 6 people, living there among the bodies, eating from the kitchen and feeding the animals. Over 100 years have passed. Dozens of suspects have been investigated, and not one has ever been charged. The case remains completely unsolved. Case 4. The Lost Colony of Roanoke. In 1587, 117 English settlers established a colony on Roanoke Island off the coast of what is now North Carolina. Their governor, John White, sailed back to England to bring supplies. and promised to return as quickly as he could. He arrived home just as war broke out with Spain, and every available ship was commandeered by the crown. He couldn't get back for 3 years. When he finally returned in 1590, the settlement was empty. Not abandoned in a hurry, just gone. The buildings and defensive structures were still standing, but every person, every belonging, and every food store had vanished with no bodies, no blood, and no signs of conflict anywhere. The only clue was a single word carved into a post at the entrance Croatoan, the name of a nearby Native American people and the island where they lived. For centuries, theories ranged from massacre to starvation to disease, but recent archaeological work and DNA analysis point toward something far more human. They didn't vanish at all. Faced with famine, no sign of rescue, and dwindling hope, the most likely explanation is that the settlers chose to integrate with nearby native communities to survive. European genetic markers have been found in descendants of local tribes, and oral traditions in the region describe tribal members with distinctly European features for generations. After the colony disappeared, they didn't disappear. They adapted. They chose survival over being found. Case 5, the Voynich Manuscript. At Yale University's Beinecke Rare Book Library, there is a handwritten book of about 240 pages on vellum, illustrated throughout, with detailed color drawings and carbon dated to the early 1400s. From the outside, it looks like any medieval manuscript, except the language it is written in does not exist anywhere on Earth, and neither do the plants illustrated on nearly every page. The British codebreakers who cracked the Enigma cipher during World War II examined it and came up with nothing. The National Security Agency attempted a formal analysis and failed. Linguists, mathematicians, and cryptographers from around the world have spent decades on it and walked away empty-handed. In 2019, an AI-assisted analysis suggested the text might be rooted in Hebrew, but that led nowhere either. What is unusual is that the text is not random. Statistical analysis shows it follows the patterns of a real natural language in terms of word length, character frequency, and repetition structure, meaning it behaves like something genuinely meaningful. It just doesn't match anything known to exist. The most unsettling theory is simply that the book means nothing at all. In 15th century Europe, wealthy collectors paid well for mysterious and arcane manuscripts, and some researchers believe the Voynich manuscript was an elaborate forgery, crafted to look profound and be permanently unsolvable, with nothing hidden inside it, because there was never anything to find. If that is true, then for 600 years, some of the greatest minds in human history have been attempting to decode a very expensive joke. Somehow, that possibility is worse than any other explanation. That's all 5. Some got answers that raised more questions, and some are still completely open after 100 years. The Somerton man finally got a name after 74 years, but we still don't know why he died. The Isdal woman was likely a spy, but no country has ever claimed her. Roanoke wasn't a disappearance at all, just people choosing to survive. And the Voynich manuscript might be the greatest prank ever played on history. Maybe what keeps drawing us back to these stories isn't the need for answers. It's the feeling that the world is stranger and larger than we're willing to admit on a normal day. And these stories give us permission to believe that, just for a while. If you enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the like button. I'll be back with more stories you've never heard before.